Good morning, FLOSSTUBE. This is Linda, and Chrissy isn't with me today, but even though market's over, she's busy working on her summer releases, and she's already stitching a few, and I've seen some sneak peeks, and they're pretty cute. So, but don't worry, she'll be back in a couple of weeks because I'm going to be gone. So more on that a little bit later, and I got to remember to look at the camera, I think. This is different for me. I've never done one of these by myself, so be patient. And actually, I couldn't do it the way that we thought I could do it, so I have to record it on my computer, and we'll just see how this goes. Yeah, so I've got notes, of course. I'm going to be looking down. It's funny. I told my friends years ago I'd never do a floss tube. Um, who could sit in front of a camera and just talk to yourself? And then Chrissy came along, and it was so much easier because, she said it's just like talking to friends, and it is. It's just like sitting and chatting about the things that we both love, and that's cross stitch. So I thought what we do today is kind of use the same routine, but I don't have a lot of finishes. I certainly don't have any fully finishes, and I don't have any finishes whatsoever. So we'll talk a little bit about what the last couple of weeks have been, at least for me. A couple of weeks ago, I guess Tuesday, started our market day at Brick City Cross Stitch. And for those of you that don't know, I help Jean, who's the owner of the store, out with all her social media stuff. She's kind of a one person show, although she does have a lot of part time help. So she doesn't really have a lot of time to be on social media or desire, actually. So I kind of started doing that for her, and we have a group called Brick City Stitchers on Facebook, and it's pretty active. We've got maybe about 2,400 members, and whenever we get any new releases in, Jean sends them to me, and then I post them there and actually take orders from there. So more on that, if you're interested in something like that, Brick City's a cross stitch store, about 30 minutes from me in Ocala, Florida. And I'm fortunate enough, and I guess I've always been fortunate, even when we lived in South Florida, to have a cross stitch shop that was pretty close to me. And of course, back in the early days, there were a lot more of them than there are now. So anyway, we had market week at Brick City, and it started on Tuesday. So my role was to just kind of go down and hand out all the pre-orders. And it's kind of fun because I see all these names, and yet I don't know faces. So it's really good to put faces to names. So that was started on Tuesday, and she started doing that because it used to be market day, and it was really pretty hectic. So she extended it for a week, and that was kind of good because then people can kind of come in at their own pace. But also, what happens is, of course, Tuesday everybody wants to run in and get their stuff, which is great. So, as of from what she told me yesterday, most everything, I think all everything has gone out in the mail to all of the on the pre-orders, and there's still some stuff left there. She got a ton of fabric at market. I've posted pictures before on my Instagram. She has a fabric problem, she calls it. She's got walls of fabric, anywhere from 14 count to 36 and 40, all the way up, and tons of colors. So, if you're ever in Florida and get near Ocala, it's a great shop and a lot of places to sit and stitch. We have a lot of groups that meet every day. Okay, I guess that's it for that. I guess right after that, or maybe sometime that week, I got a message from Chrissy, and Plum Street, Annabella's, is having a Plum Street retreat in 2025. So four of us quickly scrambled and got in. So it'll be Chrissy and myself and Jen, Sweetwater Stitcher, and my friend Diane, who wasn't around, but I got her signed up. So we're excited about that. I think that's one of my favorite designers, and I really look forward to that retreat next year. And I think it's in, oh gosh, I don't remember, maybe October, I think. Other than that, I thought what I would do is talk about maybe my cross stitch journey. I started stitching in the late 80s, or I'm sorry, late 70s, and right after my daughter was born. I had been doing needlepoint, and it was okay, but my sister-in-law, who has since passed, came over one day and brought her cross stitch. And I watched her and I said to her, "How can you do that? There's nothing stamped on there." And she said, "Oh, it's easy." I'm like, "I can't do that. There's nothing to go by." And she showed me a little bit, and I've kind of gone from there. So I mean, I stitched little things, and what I've done is I've brought some little samples, big samples, we'll see, of kind of my stitching journey when it started. And unfortunately, I'm going to show this one, and I don't know why. I shouldn't be embarrassed because I know that anybody that has stitched as long as I have probably has something similar. And I think I even saw Missy from Two Needles Pulling Thread showing one of hers. But this is one of my first ones. And I don't have real good arms, so you'll see me kind of holding my arm. I've got bad shoulders. Anyway, Christmas of '81. Oh my gosh, and look at how that thing is put together. And even look at the back of it, masking tape. Didn't we all do that back then? Yeah, we did. From there, probably in the late '70s, it was strictly just little ornaments. And it looks like I progressed to maybe, I don't know, this probably is still 14 count. And bunnies were a thing back there in the '70s. It was country and it was bunnies. Then it looks like maybe I, I maybe went to 20 count on this one. But this is kind of what I only did back in the late '70s. And at the time I was working at the bank, I worked at a bank for over 25 years. And I was working at an office up north of where we live in West Palm. And across the street was a, believe it or not, wallpaper paint store that in the corner had a little bitty section for cross stitch. So I went in and I bought my actually first book. And this was the first book that I bought. And I still have it and I still love it. And I thought at the time, oh, look, I can stitch everything in that book. I mean, I thought that's what you were supposed to do, and maybe you were back then. But I think I did stitch everything. I know I have restitched a couple of them because back then when we lived in South Florida, I think I had the apple pie and maybe the strawberries on my wall in the kitchen and no glass. Well, needless to say, over the years, they kind and when we moved, there was just no reason to take them because they were badly damaged. So after we got up here to Ocala, and that was in the late '90s, I decided to drag that book back out and restitch some for the kitchen here. So I stitched this. Hopefully, I'm going to not get too much glare. I've tried to adjust the lighting. And this is out of that book, but I think I did this one maybe on 18 or 20 count. Yeah, made it smaller. And it hangs up in the kitchen with the strawberry one, which I redid. So that was kind of the early '80s, and that was my first book. And then I found, let me see if I can find everything here. Then I found Paula Vaughn in the '80s, and I went on a Paula Vaughn kick. And I have some dates on some of these, and some of them are not dated. This looks like it's on Fiddler's Cloth. I don't know if any of you have been stitching as long as I have. You remember Fiddler's Cloth? It looks like 14 count. And I've got a date on it. It looks like of '84, not '89. So the '80s, it was all things country. We stitched bunnies. We stitched bears, Dale Burnett bears. So I stitched a lot of those. And a lot of Paula Vaughn. Here's another Paula Vaughn. And some of these, this is going to be probably a PSA for being careful how you frame. These are all framed by probably my husband or my friend Diane. And I don't know if you can see or not, but down in one of the corners and everything's backwards to me. So there's some stain coming through. And that's because it was on sticky board and probably not the right kind of sticky board, but that's all we had back then. And I've probably got another 6 or 8 Paula Vaughns that are bigger and really didn't want to try to drag them over, but this was kind of my thing in the '80s, along with Alma Lynn, which you kind of see back there on the wall. That's one of my Alma Lyns, and of course Alma Lynn bears. And then in the late '80s, and I found this book when I was looking for stuff. along comes this book, and I think it's from 89, maybe May and June of 88. And inside this book was the first article on Tina from Shepherd's Bush, with probably one of her first designs, maybe. I mean, it may have been after she'd been designing for a while. So I love the look of it, but I never stitched on linen. So my L&S at the time, now this would have been closer to the early 90s. My L&S at the time was Always in Stitches in North Palm Beach. And Bev, who was one of the owners, was going to have a class on linen. And I decided, okay, I'm going to give it a try. So this was my first piece on linen. And it is Yuletide. And what we did is with band sampler, which I've never done anything with band samplers, but it was, I don't want to say it was fun, because I said to her, I'm never going to finish this. You know, we would do a couple of bands a week, and I would get done, and you would leave your threads off to the side, and I thought, this is not going to work. Well, as the weeks went by, you know, then my statement was, okay, I'm going to finish it, but I'm never going to do another one. Well, then as the years went by, or as the sessions went by, because we met weekly and did it, by the end, I was looking for which one was I going to do next. Yeah. And about the same time, I was still stitching a lot of lavender and lace, Told in the Garden, and this was one of my angels, my first angel, and it looks like the date on this is 94. So, I'm going to be crooked here and I can't see it. This is Lavender and Lace Angel of Freedom, and I think she stitched on 14 count, probably dirty. And I have her mate. She hangs in the bedroom, and I finished the other one, which is Angel of Light. So they hang in the bedroom. So that was the early 90s. And then the early 90s also was when I discovered retreats. As I say, I lived in South Florida, and one of the largest cross-stitch shops that we had was up in Gainesville. And it was Cross-Stitch and More. Sally owned it. And she used to have camps called Camp Sit and Stitch. And so that was my first retreat, 92. And she used to do several. And I'm going to do this backwards again. And she did several a year, and they were always my vacation time when I would take time off from the bank. I would go up a day early. I didn't know anybody at the time, but I would check in and get situated and go over to, at first she had them at a hotel, and then she started having them upstairs at a shop, in her shop. I met so many people then, and I went to several a year, and that continued on. And then the next retreats I found were the Cross Stitch Pals retreat. For any of you that have, again, been around for a while, those were in Myrtle Beach, and Amy from down Sunshine Lane started those, probably in the late 90s. I went to the first two. Again, met lots of people. It was so much fun. And then after the Shepherd's Bush and those, that's pretty much, we get into the 2000s, and still a lot of Lavender and Lace. Paula Vaughn still. Linda Myers was one of my favorite designers. And in the late 90s, my friends and I that owned the shop went out to Shepherd's Bush in Utah. And that was just one of my most favorite times. It was my friend Bev and Diane, who co-owned the shop, and Joanne and myself. And we flew out, spent days out there, rode up to Park City. It was just one of those times in your memories that you won't ever forget. And I'm really looking forward to going back in a few weeks out to Shepherd's Bush, but actually for Stitch West, which is going to be in Ogden, I guess within a block or so of Shepherd's Bush, but getting to meet the Primrose Cottage girls back several years ago. I think it may have been their first online retreat. I got to meet them via video when I was helping Jean with the orders for the shop, and they're just really the sweetest girls, and I look forward to meeting them. I kind of think that's most of my cross stitch journey. However, I do have then when we moved up here to Ocala, and even though we were in the country, for some reason I got the beachy bug. I miss the ocean. I believe it or not, I surfed back when I was a teenager. I spent a lot of time in the water. We had a pool. Luckily, we still have a pool here, although it's not quite warm enough to go in yet. But I found country cottage and little house needlework, and I started doing many of their series: Farmhouse Christmas, Frosty. Can't remember the name of it. It's the winter one, and but several of theirs. And then I love all their beachy scenes. So I think this one looks like it's dated 2015. And then along comes With I Needle. Found With I Needle. And I think it was 2018. I went out to the Silver Needle retreat with my friend Diane and had fun sitting at a table with friends I now get to see every now and then, and that's Marcy Thiessen and Tara Sullivan and Jennifer Purple Stitcher. Sat with them, was a little intimidated when I walked back to sit because I kind of knew who they were. And it's one of those, ooh, I'm going to sit with them. Ooh, what am I going to say kind of thing. But it worked. I mean, they were just the sweetest. And Marcy at the time, or right afterwards, had been working on With I Needle, and it was a box, and it was called O Tannenbaum. I immediately went out and bought it and started stitching it, and that was really one of my first With I Needle finishes. I didn't bring it. All my Christmas stuff is packed up, so I couldn't get to it, but that was one of my first pieces, and I think I've been stitching With I Needle ever since. So that's kind of my cross stitch journey. What I thought I'd show you is some of the ways that I had kept track of. I've always kept track of what I'm stitching and who's a designer and the fabric I stitch it on. When I started working at the bank, I always had a desktop, which I still have because I work remotely for my CPA firm. But I've always had a desktop, and I've always used Excel, so I started like it looks like back in '93 with just a little Excel spreadsheet. And I would put on there, and it actually had, when I got closer down towards the bottom, I knew what date that I finished it, so I would enter it there. But it had the name of the chart, the name of the designer, and maybe what I stitched it on. So I started that like maybe in the early '90s, it looks like, and I just continued on. And then came, gosh, probably 2018, maybe 19. Then came my smartphone, which my daughter got me hooked on. She was living in Portland, Oregon at the time and had an iPhone, which I thought I'd never have. And so I got an iPhone, and all of a sudden there's apps, and I found the X-Stitch Plus app. So I started using it. Now this, I don't have a copy of the actual screen, what it looks like on your phone, but when you open it, this is what mine looks like. You can put a picture in it, your name, of course, and then you can see how many journal entries, meaning kitted, started, finished. There's a column for each. All of your threads are inventoried, and your charts are inventoried. Yes, it took me a long time to get them all in, but I love this app. It prevents me from buying duplicates. It prevents me from buying multiple threads, which I still do sometimes. And it's a way to keep track of what you have kitted, what you have finished, with dates you started and dates you finished. And I don't really use any project card kind of things. This is kind of what my thing is. And I still keep up my Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, I know, it's just a thing. It's me. I think sometimes I enjoy organizing almost as much as I enjoy stitching. Well, maybe not as much, but anyway. So That's kind of that. And it's probably going to be a short one today, guys, because I don't know. Flosstubers watched. Oh, I love Flosstube. I've been watching for a long time. Uh, Sunday nights are my nights to stitch late and watch Pam and Steph. I think I've watched them ever since they came on. I enjoy I enjoy their banner back and forth, and I enjoy. Pam and I stitch a lot of things that are very similar, so I always like to see, and I like to see Steph's too. It's just that Pam and I both love nautical. We both love lighthouses, and it's always fun to see what she's stitching. Lately, some of my favorites: running with scissors, stitching with Jane and Julie. I love them. I just you can't help but not grin and laugh out loud when you watch them. They're back. I'm glad to see that Jane is doing better. I had to laugh the other night. I watched their latest one, and she was talking. She showed a shepherd's bush. She has a love of shepherd's bush as well, and she showed a shepherd's bush that she was going to start. And I almost wanted to, one of those things where you immediately want to go and message her. But the chart she showed was, I believe, a checkerboard. And the time that we were out in Utah, they were actually filming the cover sheet for that. So it was like immediately when she showed it, I was like, I know that chart. But I love watching her. I love watching Missy and Kathy. I love to see what they're stitching. I love to hear about all the things they're doing. Kathy and I met briefly at Myrtle Beach. It was fun. And hopefully Missy and I think Missy and I may see each other sometime this year. So that was cool. And then I watched a new one to me, and it was Brandy and her daughter from B&E Stitchery. And actually, what happened is I got a message the other day from my friend Denise, who lives south of me, that she's coming up to Brick City next Saturday, and was bringing Brandy from B&E Stitchery. So I thought, well, I probably should at least watch so I know what she looks like. So I watched it, and she sounded thrilled that she was coming, and she was going to get to see the wall of fabric that Jean has up. It'll be fun to meet her, and I enjoyed watching her and her daughter. That was fun. I seem to like watching the two people together interact. I think I had a conversation. I met Laura a couple of years ago at StitchCon of Brenda and Laura, and I told her at the time, and I've said this before, I don't stitch what they stitch, but I love to watch the two of them together. It's just, I don't know, there's something about it, the friendship, the how they love what they do. So those are actually two. I have a lot of favorites, but they're one of my favorites too. Okay, let's see what else do we have here. We talked about the floss tubers. I talked about those whips. I don't have a lot of whips, and this is one of the reasons where I told Chrissy it's not going to be very long. I finished that winter sampler a couple weeks ago, so that was a big one. I have I have four whips, and I've never been actually pretty much before I met Chrissy, I was pretty monogamous. I'd always have a big one going and maybe a little one going, but never more than a couple. Well, I think I have four now, which is still not too bad for me, and I still feel okay with that. But what I've been stitching on lately is a Sal. It was started back in August of last year, and it's with Samantha, the Hygie Stitcher, and it's for Summer Quaker. And I'm actually stitching just the middle section of this because I want it to go on my wall along with my beachy coastal stuff. And I know I'm probably one of very few, but I'm not much of a Quaker person. I've tried to stitch one before, and it just, I love scenery. I love something that I can look and it's like telling a story, but scenery, houses, beachy. I mean, I love fall and winter too, but that's kind of my jam. And so I thought it was better that I just did the middle. So I've got these pinned a little bit so I don't have to hold them real high, maybe. But this is my progress so far. And this is what I plan on doing is this is going with me to Stitch West in a couple weeks. I finished that whale last night, and I would like to get the bottom of that. I think I'm doing this right. The bottom, across the bottom, all the way across. There's some plants and there's some fish and there's some other things. If I can get that all done, then basically all I have left is water. And then there's a few back stitching and the lighthouse and the mermaid, I think. But that's my progress. It's on 32 count refined by Fortnite Fabrics, and it's a bluish gray, light blue. So that's what I've been working on uh, ever since Winter Sampler. And my next one is also it's a sal. In fact, it's Ginger's birthday sal that we started back a while back, and it's my choice. And this we also use this for Prairie Schooler Saturday. Hashtag Prairie Schooler Saturday is Christmas Village by Prairie Schooler. And Ginger's a lot further along than I am, but this is my progress, and it's on 32 count Silver Mist, I believe it's called. I wanted something off white or something where that snowman would show up, and I think he's going to show pretty good. And there's a little more white in there in a couple other places. So that's my progress on that, and that's typically a Saturday stitch. Although last week I stitched on it Friday because I hadn't stitched much on it for a couple of weeks. So haul. Okay, let's see here. I had an interesting experience yesterday. I This was one of my market pieces that I have been waiting and waiting for it to come out because I want to put it on my wall next to Live on Little because it's kind of a mate. It's smaller, but it's kind of a mate. So I bought it and I thought, okay, I'm going to do it on the same fabric as I did Live on Little, which was 32 count cream and sugar by Fiber on a Whim. So bought it, serged it, or it was serged. That's a great thing about Brick City. They serge the fabric they will cut to size and serge. So bought it, got it serged, got it home, and then I looked at it and I thought, uh-oh, that pelican up there is not going to show. It's white. And even the house. And then I went and looked at my Live on Little, and Live on Little did not have a lot of white. So I thought, okay. So I went down to the shop yesterday, Brick City, and said to Jean, cream of sugar is not going to work. What do you think? So we started looking and looking, and she found a piece that was just the right size of 32 count. Picture this plus oaken, I want to say. That might not be right. Anyway, I thought, okay, that's the best I can do because I didn't see anything else. As I was walking out the door, she was opening the Fabric of the Month from Atomic Ranch, which happened to be Golden Harvest. And I can, yeah, but it's perfect, and it's more golden than it's showing on here, and I think it's going to look great. I pull the colors, and I normally use floss away bags, so this will be probably one of the first times you see me with just the floss. Let's see if we can do this. But those are the colors, and I think they're going to be fine. Those are only some of the colors, and I think they're going to be fine. And I was happy to see that with this version of American Welcome, the first version called for, I believe, 9 colors of color and cotton. And this newer version that was just reprinted for market release has the alternatives of Weeks and General Arts and Classic Colorworks, which is good because I guess I forgot to say that when I was down in South Florida at the time, and I was still working for the bank, I went to work part time for my cross stitch store, and that was after my friends Diane and Bev sold it to Carol. So I started working part time, and my goal then was to, okay, Linda, let's get all the fibers. Let's try to collect all the gentle arts, all the weeks, all the classic color works at the time were Crescent, so that you're going to have them when you retire, and you'll be all set, and you'll never have to buy another thing. Yeah, right. Well, of course, while I still have a fair amount, there's always going to be new stuff coming out, and there's always going to be. However, I will say I still tend to go to my. Okay, it's the other way. That pile cabinet back there used to have a lot of business stuff in it, and it has slowly kind of weeded down to, I think, one whole section. There's two four highs there. One whole section is cross stitch stuff, charts, and miscellaneous stuff and other things. So I still have a tendency to go over, and they're divided by Christmas, fall, winter, and some designers like Paul Levon. I still have a ton of Paul Levon, Linda Myers, and some of those. So I'll go over there and start looking for something that I thought I had and find things that I pull out that I want to stitch. So anyway, that was really only my haul that I have, and I don't know when I'm going to start it. I am going to take it with me to Stitch West because I know that Deb got it from Snug Harbor, and maybe I can talk her into a sow. We'll see. The other thing in plans is April 1st, which is just a little bit of a week away. I want to say, I think that's right. We're having a sow at Brick City, and it's for the new Frosty Tiny Town. And I loved it. Of course, I love anything winter. And I've done a couple of hers. I've done the Harvest, and I've done the Seaside. And so I bought this, and I got fabric. And I'm going to use, okay, am I going to remember what this is? This is 32 count, and it's a gray, and it's Vintage Stormy Night. That's what it is. So it looks close to the one that they used. I don't know what they used, but it looks close to it. So that starts April 1st. And what we're doing is, we did this last year too, when Seaside Tiny Town came out. We've said to the stitchers, it's for any of the tiny towns that you want to stitch. So we're calling it #YourTinyTown South. So I'll start that April 1st. So that'll probably go to Stitch West with me as well. I think I'm going to have to start looking at what I'm taking to Stitch West and make sure I thin it down to where there's not too much, because I have to leave some room for stuff coming back. All right, let's see, that's planned. In 2 weeks, you'll see Chrissy here. I'm going to be at a local retreat. Jean used to have and is starting kind of back having a first Sunday stitch, and it's just all day at the shop, and I signed up for that. And then the following Tuesday, I go down to my friend Diane's house in Orlando, and we'll leave Wednesday morning early to fly to Salt Lake. I'm excited about that. I haven't flown in a while. So I'm excited for that. We'll get in Wednesday pretty early, and we plan on going. We were hoping that Craft Gallery, but we know they closed. We'll be going to Pine Needles, which I think is in Salt Lake or close to Salt Lake, and then running up to Ogden for Wednesday night, and then Thursday we have all day planned for Shepherd's Bush. So I'm excited about that. I love to see the conversions that they do. So it's going to be such fun. And then I think the retreat starts Friday about 10 o'clock, and we'll be there Friday, Saturday, and we'll leave Sunday afternoon and drive back down to Salt Lake, and our flight back is on a Monday. So I'll be gone that week as well, but I think that's our off week. But like I say, Chrissy will be here in 2 weeks, and then I guess I'll be back in about a month. And so I can't think of anything else. I hope this works. This is my first time recording, and I found that when I went to try to do it from YouTube, I couldn't do it. So I'm having to do it, record a video on my desktop, and we're going to hope it uploads. So in the meantime, guys, thanks for watching this hot mess, and I look forward to seeing y'all in a month with Chrissy. And as she always says, don't forget to floss. Bye.